Casper, as two guys from the Netherlands, we want to talk today about two Dutch companies that I think a lot of investors know, especially the first one, ASML, and the second one is ASMI. Both companies in the chip sector.
Both were in the news, and both they went up a lot on Thursday.
Yes.
Because
mainly driven through the astronomical figures of NVIDIA in this case. The shares went up almost 30%.
Why?
Well, NVIDIA is benefiting a lot from the whole AI, the artificial intelligence boom that is going on. You see the company is there's a lot of expectation there in what, because the CEO was also very positive about the bubble that is, I'm calling it a bubble because I listened this morning to the Saxo podcast, and there they were talking also about the possible bubble that is being created around the whole artificial intelligence. You have to bear in mind, you're paying the earnings per share were $1.10 for this quarter. So if you polarize that to 4,
and that was a really good quarter.
And that was a really good quarter, extremely good quarter. But then the price of the stock is almost 400. So $400 per share. So it's really expensive stock. You talk about almost 400 times, 200 times the earnings, which is not cheap.
100 times the earnings, all right.
Yeah, something like that. Sorry, yes, thank you. So what is NVIDIA doing? They're not making their own chips. I thought because I thought they were making their chips themselves, but they developed them, they designed them, and then Taiwan Semiconductor is producing their chips, amongst others, of course. And also one thing is really important for NVIDIA is that a lot of the data centers in the world need to be recycled, need to be renewed, and they are one of the pioneers and one of the powerful players to do that. So yeah, a lot of expectation in the price, and interesting to see what it will bring over the next couple of years, because the CEO is saying we're just at the start of a 10-year cycle here. ASMI and ASML.
They went both up.
Both up.
And they have an interesting history.
Yeah, what I always see when when we were also in Valencia on the fair, a lot of also Spanish investors and I think American investors, ASML is very well known in the world. ASMI is not as much known in the world. And the funny thing is that if you look at the history of two companies, ASMI, it's ASM International, already existed in the 70s. It was a company founded by one of the best Dutch tech entrepreneurs that we've ever known. It was Arthur del Prado. And he was at the time not very positive about the Dutch environment for entrepreneurship, etc., etc. So he said, okay, guys, in 1981, he went to the stock market, first company from the Netherlands that went to had a listing on the NASDAQ. He bought ASM International to the NASDAQ. And then of course chips also in that period were already hot. They needed more chips for everything, and Philips had a machine, but they needed somebody to produce it, etc., etc. So, and they didn't want to work together with ASM International. So eventually, after 3 years of lobbying and all his charm offensives that he put in place, Arthur de Prado achieved a joint venture agreement with Philips, and that joint venture agreement is called ASML. ASM lithography, and later on Philips sold the stake in ASM lithography, and it became an independent company on the stock market. It was, I think, in 1995 approximately. And ASM International is still existing as a independent company. They do also chip production, but more like the silicium waffles, as they call it. You will tell a little bit more on where they are in the process, both companies, but yeah, really interesting. I mean, it's something that we as people from Holland can be proud of. I think it's tech companies. They have a really prominent role on the world. They're one of the top players in this sector, and growth is what is ahead of them, because everything, electrical cars, everything is going to be using much more chips and smaller chips, and I even talk about picometers. It's like 0.000000001. It's so tiny. And the amount of data that they can store on that, it's incredible. It's a fantastic technology. From an investment perspective, and also a little bit more, tell us about those companies. What's the difference? How can
so a lot of what you said, a lot of investors, if they invest in one of them, it's mostly ASML.
Yes.
It's a much more popular company. And if you look at the whole process of making a chip, then ASME is in the first part. They make a layering, ALD it's called, and about if that layering is, they make it quite well, and then the chips can be smaller and they can be better, and that's of course the goal every time of all the chips smaller and faster. And ASML is coming later in that process. If you look at ASML, if you look at the stock, how they did it the last 10 years, if you look at it, I think probably we'll put it in the screen, it's almost the same chart. So
it's very similar.
Yeah, some sites they say there is a small correlation. Now, if I look this over a longer period, I think it's almost one-to-one correlation. So that's also from a investment perspective. It didn't matter too much which one you bought.
No, exactly. It doesn't matter.
No, they went up. You look, they went up from what is it here, 50 in 2019 to 600 now. So they made such a big jump, but there is a fundamental layer under it that supported that because there was a lot of growth in that industry with those companies. So if you then look at the existing figures, ASML is much bigger company, much bigger. Also, if you look to the ratio debt asset, then ASML has a 10% ratio, so they have 10% of their assets is debt. It's quite reasonable. Warren Buffett will like it. No?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And those companies make profit. So that's always good. Then you can lower your debt, of course. If you can't, then your debt will go up and your interest rates will go up.
Exactly.
And then if you look at ASML, they have only 1% of their assets in debt. So from that perspective, ASMI is really interesting.
Absolutely.
If you look at the estimations for this year, the revenue growth, because this is a sector where you said where a lot of growth is expected, then you see that ASMI has a probably growth percentage of 8.7%. It's good, but if you compare it to ASML, it's 25%.
Yeah, that's good. ASML is more like NVIDIA, as in a growth expectation.
Yeah,
double figures. Yeah.
And if you look at ASML, they are a monopolist. They have hardly no competitors. ASMI has competitors, not that much, and they have in the main thing, so the ALD process that they do also some other things, and in the other products that they deliver, there is even more growth percentage-wise expected, but in the ALD process, it's expected that it will grow for the next 2 years 50%. So it's always nice, we said it in the past, if you invest in a sector that will grow. You never know how much it grows, but then if you keep the same market share, they have in that ALD sector 50% market share. If that grows with 50% and you maintain the 50%, fantastic.
Fantastic, yeah.
That's what an investor wants, huh?
Yeah.
So I think that from that side, ASMI is really interesting. If you look at the earnings per share, again, based on the expected earnings of this year, then you pay for ASML 34. It's 1/3 of NVIDIA. It is almost 100.
Yeah.
So in that sector, it's
cheap.
It's
also say that.
But if you compare it to ASMI, it's only 13. So from that perspective,
it's very cheap.
Yeah, that's really cheap. Yeah, so it's a cheap and cheaper.
Yeah.
So I think that. Then one thing I saw also, that's the NPS score. An NPS score that says something about the company and how likable it is for clients that they promote it to other possible buyers. And then you see big difference. And that I think is something that, because when you said the son of the founder, he took over, he was CEO and he left. So and what we see, there are some that was not really a good time, and it's still thinking in the culture, because culture-wise, ASML is much higher evaluated than ASMI. And if you look at the NPS score, then it's a 42 for ASML and a -11 for ASMI. So internally, probably there are some struggles with ASMI. But I think they're both fantastic companies. And it's always nice if you believe in its sector, if you have two companies that are in the same sector, but they do something different. So if you want to say, okay, I want to buy something for 10,000 euros, then you can now decide for yourself, based on what you think is important. Okay, I buy them both, because then I spread my risk, because I'm not betting on the monopolist ASML with a higher valuation, or on ASMI with a lower PE, but then you spread your risk.
Yeah, they both also have a very prominent position in any semiconductor ETF.
Yeah.
NVIDIA most of the time is the biggest one, then TSMC, Taiwan
TSMC,
Semiconductor, and then ASML, ASMI, almost always in the top 5. You have Broadcom also in there, but
And
in
TSMC is seen as a competitor of ASMI and not ASML.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, I think food for thought. Thank you for watching, and
Give us your time.
exactly.
Thank you.